If your dog insists on sleeping right next to you every night, not at the foot of the bed, not across the room, but pressed against your leg, curled behind your knees, or resting against your back, that position isn't random, and it isn't just affection. So why that exact place? Why you, and not the empty space 2 feet away? When a dog settles in for the night, they're not looking for comfort, they're choosing position. And where they position themselves reveals how they map safety and risk. The reason your dog sleeps so close has more to do with instinct than emotion. Long before dogs lived in houses, they lived in coordinated groups. And in those groups, sleeping distance mattered. The outer edges carried exposure, the center carried protection. In pack structures, where you slept determined how exposed you were. The farther from the core, the more territory required monitoring. That structure increased survival, and that wiring never disappeared, even in a quiet bedroom. When your dog chooses to sleep close to you, they're orienting toward what feels most stable in the room, the stable center. In your home, that center is you. During the day, information is everywhere. Movement, light, noise. Dogs constantly assess their surroundings. But at night, visibility drops. Sound patterns change. Shadows distort perception. And when environmental certainty decreases, instinct reduces distance. This isn't neediness, it's risk management. In low visibility conditions, proximity shortens reaction time. It reduces blind spots. It limits the area that must be monitored. At night, closeness isn't emotional, it's tactical positioning. At night, both your body temperature and your dog's temperature naturally drop. In the wild, that mattered. Shared warmth wasn't comfort, it was conservation. Energy saved during sleep meant strength preserved for the next day. That instinct still runs quietly in the background. But here's the detail most people miss. If warmth were the only factor, your dog would choose a thick blanket, a heated spot, or the softest corner of the bed. Yet, many dogs move past all of that and press against you instead. Because this isn't just about heat, it's about regulated heat from a biologically familiar source. Your scent, your rhythm, your baseline temperature. Familiar physiology stabilizes sleep faster than neutral warmth ever could. Watch closely before your dog settles. They don't just lie down, they pause, they turn, sometimes they circle. They align their body with walls, with doorways, with open space. That's not random behavior, it's subconscious positioning. Every sleeping spot has angles. One direction faces the door, another exposes the back, another limits visibility. The farther your dog is from you, the more territory they must account for alone. But when they sleep against you, one entire side becomes secured. Half the environment no longer requires monitoring. Closeness reduces perimeter, and reduced perimeter means simpler defense. For an instinct-driven brain, simpler territory equals deeper rest. Not all dogs manage distance the same way. Some sleep a few feet away. Others gradually shift closer after you fall asleep. Some start near the edge of the bed and end up pressed against you by morning. They don't consciously decide to move. They drift closer once they feel fully at rest. That variation isn't random. It reflects how much physical closeness they prefer during sleep. Sleep is when defenses are lowest. Breathing slows. Muscle tone drops. Alertness decreases. Dogs with stronger proximity-driven bonding tendencies naturally reduce space during that phase. This isn't anxiety, it's calibrated closeness. Over time, your dog learns how close feels right during rest. And sleep is when that preference shows most clearly. How close they sleep reveals how tightly they prefer to align. When your dog sleeps close to you, most people assume they're looking for protection, but often, they're positioning to respond. Think about this. In the middle of the night, if something shifts, a distant sound, a vibration in the floor, a sudden change in your breathing, distance determines delay. 2 feet away is slower than 6 inches. And here's what most people don't realize. Even when your dog looks asleep, part of their brain may still be monitoring movement. A change in muscle tension, a shift under the blanket, a subtle inhale pattern. Sleeping close shortens reaction time. Many dogs choose proximity not to feel safer, but to react faster. And when reaction time matters, inches make a difference. In the dark, speed matters more than comfort. Comfort is secondary. Awareness comes first. When a dog sleeps alone in a space, the entire environment belongs to them. Every doorway, every window, every unfamiliar sound. Even in light sleep, part of their brain stays active, monitoring. But when they sleep beside you, the equation changes. Your presence signals additional environmental awareness. If something unusual happens, you'll move. You'll react. And your dog will feel it instantly. Your movement becomes an early warning system. Closeness reduces how much territory their brain feels responsible for. And reduced responsibility allows deeper rest cycles. Not because they're dependent, because they're optimizing effort. Now here's the part most owners overlook. If sleeping beside you consistently leads to uninterrupted rest, the brain records that outcome. Night after night, the pattern strengthens. Position, calm sleep. Repeat position. Over time, that distance becomes default. You may not even notice it forming, but the brain does. Dogs repeat behaviors that reduce disruption. If proximity has repeatedly resulted in fewer startle responses, faster settling, and smoother sleep transitions, that location becomes preferred. The brain tags that position as low disruption. And once a position feels reliable, it becomes automatic. They memorize the normal rhythm of your home, the usual time the lights go off, the typical background sounds, the way your breathing settles once you fall asleep. Once a pattern becomes predictable, it becomes safe. But on certain nights, something shifts. A storm changes air pressure, wind hits the windows differently, footsteps pass outside later than usual, you go to bed at a different time. Even if you barely notice it, your dog does. And when environmental certainty drops, distance tightens. Moving closer isn't panic, it's recalibration. And sometimes, the variable isn't the room, it's you. Changes in your breathing, restlessness, stress you carry into the night. Your dog adjusts to that too. When variables increase, they reduce space. Proximity stabilizes the most important reference point in the room. You. Now zoom out. In every coordinated group structure, there is a center. Not symbolic, spatial. The center is where stability concentrates. In natural sleeping formations, outer positions carry higher alert load. Central positions reduce exposure. Dogs instinctively orient toward what feels like the most stable anchor in their environment. They don't think about it, they map it. Movement patterns, predictability, consistency over time. In your home, the most stable moving element is usually you, your routine, your sleep rhythm, your presence. So when your dog settles against you at night, they're not just choosing closeness, they're selecting the environmental core, and instinct always favors the core. But here's what makes this even more interesting. If you pay attention, you'll notice something. Some nights, your dog sleeps near you. Other nights, they press even closer than usual. That shift isn't random, and it isn't always driven by the same instinct, because certain triggers tighten proximity more than others. And once you recognize those triggers, you'll start predicting when your dog will move closer, before they even do. That's what we'll break down next.